Imagine waking up in a medieval town. The streets are alive, merchants shouting prices, kids running around, church bells echoing. Life feels normal, even safe. But by the end of the day, your neighbor is coughing, dark swellings spread across their skin. And by morning, they're gone. Within a week, half your street is silent. This was the reality of the Black Death, a plague so deadly that between 1347 and 1351, it wiped out 1 in 3 people across Europe. Some say it was even closer to half. Whole villages disappeared. Cities turned into ghost towns, and life as people knew it was shaken to its core. But here's the real question. Was the Black Death only about death? Or did it force people to rethink faith, power, and even what life itself was worth? And how did something so small, a disease no one could even see, change the entire course of history? If you're ready to dive into this dark but fascinating story, make sure to like this video and subscribe. That way, you won't miss more deep dives into the mysteries and turning points that shaped our world. Europe before the plague. In the early 1300s, life in Europe was already hard. Most people lived in small villages, working on land owned by wealthy lords. Harvests often failed, which meant hunger was never far away. Just a few decades earlier, the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317 had killed millions when cold weather destroyed crops. Those who survived were left weaker, and their children grew up thin and malnourished, which made the whole population more at risk of sickness. Cities were growing, but they weren't healthy places to live. The streets were crowded and filthy. People threw waste outside their doors. Animals shared the same spaces, and clean water was hard to find. Disease spread quickly, but nobody knew about germs yet. Instead, people believed sickness came from bad air, from curses, or as punishment from God. The church stood at the very center of daily life. It gave people hope and answers during times of suffering, but it also demanded strict obedience. Many trusted that prayers, rituals, and blessings could protect them, but nothing could truly prepare them for what was about to arrive. A plague unlike anything the world had ever seen. The arrival of the Black Death. The plague first entered Europe through trade. In October 1347, a fleet of ships sailed into the busy port of Messina in Sicily. On board, they carried grain, sailors, and something far more dangerous that no one could see. Hidden among the sacks of food were fleas infected with a deadly bacterium called Yersinia pestis. These fleas lived on black rats, which thrived on ships that traveled across the Mediterranean. By the time the ships docked, the horror was already visible. Many sailors were dead, their bodies covered with dark, swollen lumps known as buboes, filled with pus and blood. Those who were still alive staggered onto land, carrying the plague into the town. Fear spreads as fast as the sickness itself. From Sicily, the plague followed Europe's busy trade routes. By early 1348, it had reached Genoa and Venice in Italy, then swept through France, Spain, and over the Alps into Germany. That summer, Paris fell ill. By September, it had crossed the Channel into London. Within just 4 years, nearly every corner of Europe was touched. Writers described scenes of horror. A monk in Avignon wrote, "In many towns, not 1 in 10 survived." Giovanni Boccaccio in Florence recorded, "Black boils grew in the groin and armpits, spreading across the body." Soon after, death. No king, no priest, no army had the power to stop it. The horror of the plague years. The plague was terrifying not only because it killed people, but because it killed them so quickly. A person could wake up feeling fine, fall sick by midday, and be dead before the sun went down. Nothing in history had prepared people for that kind of speed. The most common type was the bubonic plague, which caused huge, painful lumps called buboes on the body. But there were even deadlier forms. Pneumonic plague attacked the lungs, making it hard to breathe, while septicemic plague spread through the blood, often killing in just a single day. Burial grounds could not keep up. In London, giant plague pits were dug to bury thousands at once. In Avignon, the Pope ordered new cemeteries because churchyards were overflowing. People tried carrying flowers and herbs, thinking sweet smells would protect them. Some even connect this to the nursery rhyme, "Ring-a-ring-a roses," though historians still debate that. Fear tore society apart. Families abandoned loved ones. Priests refused to perform last rites. Some people turned to reckless parties, while others joined flagellant groups, whipping themselves in search of God's mercy. Worst of all, Jewish communities were blamed and massacred, especially in Germany and Switzerland. The Black Death wasn't just a disease, it was a social earthquake that shook Europe to its core. Myth-busting the Black Death. As time passed, many legends and myths grew around the plague. Let's clear up a few of them. Myth 1. The plague killed instantly. Not true. Most people who caught it died within a few days, not within minutes or hours. Still, compared to other diseases, the speed of death was shocking and terrifying. Myth 2. It was only the bubonic plague. The bubonic form was the most common, but there were also pneumonic and septicemic versions. Some historians even think the Black Death may have been mixed with other illnesses, which could explain why it spread so far and so fast. Myth 3. Rats alone caused it. Rats did play a part, but new research shows that human fleas and lice also carried the infection. So the truth is more complicated than just blaming the rats. Myth 4. The Black Death ended feudalism overnight. The plague did weaken the feudal system, but it wasn't instant. Over many years, labor shortages gave peasants more power to demand better pay and conditions. Society changed slowly, step by step, not all at once. Thanks to old chronicles, tax records, and even skeletons dug up from plague pits, historians today can separate the myths from the reality. Voices from the time. The Black Death left people so shocked that many wrote down what they saw. Their words still let us feel the fear of that time. In Florence, the writer Boccaccio described how families broke apart. He wrote, "Brother abandoned brother, and fathers and mothers left their children uncared for." Fear was stronger than love. In Paris, a group of doctors in 1348 tried to explain the plague. They said it was caused by a strange alignment of planets in the sky. At the time, people didn't know about germs, so they searched for answers in the stars. In Avignon, the Pope came up with his own way to survive. He sat between two large fires, believing the heat would clean the air around him. Strangely enough, he lived. In England, records from local parishes show whole villages vanishing from the tax lists. That means entire communities had died out. These voices from the past show just how lost people felt. They wanted meaning. They wanted answers. But science was not ready to give them. The aftermath. By 1351, the first wave of the Black Death finally began to fade, but Europe was changed forever. Tens of millions had died, and in some regions, entire villages were left empty. Some places did not return to their old population for hundreds of years. With so many lives lost, there were not enough workers for the fields. This gave peasants more power than before. They began asking for better pay and living conditions. Many left their villages for towns and cities, weakening the old feudal system and slowly opening the door to a more modern economy. Religion also shifted. Some people lost faith in the church, while others became even more devoted, believing the plague was God's punishment. Art and culture reflected this fear with images of skeletons and the dance of death. The plague did not truly vanish. It returned in smaller waves for centuries, until modern medicine finally broke its hold. The timeline of the Black Death. The Black Death moved across the world with frightening speed. 1346. Reports of a strange sickness appeared in Central Asia and the Black Sea region. Traders and travelers carried it along their routes, not knowing what they were spreading. October 1347. The plague reached Europe. Ships sailing into the Sicilian port of Messina brought more than grain and sailors. They carried the disease itself. 1348. It spread quickly through Italy, France, Spain, Switzerland, and crossed the sea to England. Entire towns fell silent within months. 1349. The plague reached Germany, Austria, Scandinavia, and even Ireland. No corner of Europe felt safe. 1350 to 1351. The sickness reached Russia and Eastern Europe. From west to east, the continent was covered in death. After 1351, the first great wave finally slowed. But the plague never truly disappeared. It returned again and again with smaller outbreaks, haunting Europe until the 1700s. Legacy and what remains today. Today we remember the Black Death as one of the darkest times in history, but it didn't just bring death, it also changed the future. It reshaped economies, weakened the old feudal system, and left a deep mark on culture and religion. It showed how fragile human life and society can be when faced with an invisible enemy. Even now, reminders of the plague are still being uncovered. Archaeologists find plague pits under cities like London and Marseille, where thousands were buried together. In 2013, scientists studied skeletons from that time and even rebuilt the plague's DNA. They confirmed that the disease was caused by Yersinia pestis, the same deadly bacteria that spread through fleas and rats. The Black Death is not only a story from the past, it is a warning, showing us how disease can change the course of history in ways no one expects. The Black Death killed millions, reshaped Europe, and left scars that are still visible even today. But here's something to think about. Centuries from now, what will people uncover about our time? Will future archaeologists dig up masks, vaccines, and stories of lockdowns the same way we uncover plague pits from the past? History isn't only about what happened. It's also about what we choose to remember and the lessons we carry forward. So the real question is, what will our time be remembered for? If you found this story thought-provoking, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves history. And remember, every chapter of the past has something to teach us about today.